Let's begin with a structural overview. Welcome to another lecture. Today we examine Mel Brooks, a singular American practitioner of farce, parody, and theatrical song who, over 7 decades, converted personal fury and historical trauma into laughter that traveled from radio to records, from film to Broadway, and back again. I am Alexei. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. Thank you for listening. I'm excited to think through how someone can be both deeply irreverent and also so widely honored.
To frame our discussion, it's important to understand Brooks's significance. He's an EGOT winner, meaning he has secured the 4 major American Entertainment Awards: Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, which signals cross-media mastery. He writes, directs, performs, and crucially, composes or commissions songs that function as structural jokes. His films, The Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, reconfigured American satire by fusing slapstick, meta-commentary, and musical pastiche. We observe a consistent willingness to break the fourth wall while remaining legible to general audiences. 2 terms. First, EGOT. We have defined it. Second, the Borscht Belt. Mid-century Catskills resorts were tamaliers, energetic social entertainers, kept guests laughing between meals and dances. Brooks worked there as a teenager. This crucible honed instantaneous crowd reading, call and response timing, and the shamelessness required for audacity. That is to say, the exact toolkit we later see weaponized in his films and on Broadway.
So yeah, moving on. Why should we still care? I think the stakes feel contemporary. He used parody to poke at taboos, Nazism, racism, religion, in ways that either free an audience or, risk misunderstanding.
Indeed. The cultural relevance lies in his demonstration that ridicule can be counter-programming against authoritarian glamour. In Blazing Saddles, for example, slurs are not endorsements. They are instruments exposing racist absurdity, delivered within a narrative that centers a black hero and, as Brooks put it, functions as a Jewish Western. Historically, many audiences collapse satire with the thing satirized. Clarifying that distinction remains a live pedagogical challenge. Let's start with the history. Melvin James Kaminsky, later Mel Brooks, was born in June 1926 in Brownsville, Brooklyn, literally on a kitchen table. His father died when Brooks was 2. He later traced a through line from that early loss to the anger he clothed in comedy. As a teen, he studied drums with Buddy Rich, earning money from music. His name was shortened to Brooks to avoid confusion with trumpeter Max Kaminsky. Wartime intervened. High Army test scores led to the specialized training program at VMI, with, surprisingly, horse riding and saber. Then combat engineering in Europe, locating landmines and helping throw Bailey bridges across the Ruhr and the Rhine. 2 vivid wartime images endure. First, responding to German loudspeakers by singing Al Jolson's Toot Toot Tootsie through a bullhorn, gallows humor as psychological warfare. Second, the stockade after smashing an anti-Semitic heckler's helmet with a mess kit, anger redirected later into satire. Reports differ slightly on his exact month of arrival in Europe. The written record agrees on 1944-45 service near the front, and after VE Day, a formal shift into special services as a comic.
It makes me wonder how those experiences made the later fearlessness possible. Like, once you have faced landmines, a risky joke is a different category.
Precisely. Moving to peacetime, by the late 1940s and early 1950s, Brooks is in Sid Caesar's writers' rooms with Carl Reiner, Neil and Danny Simon, Larry Gelbart, and others, an incubator that shaped American television comedy. In 1968, his first feature, The Producers, released after initial rejections and positioned almost as an art film, provoked shock and eventually delight. The next year brought the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. Then 1974 was an annus mirabilis, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, both box office giants and critical touchstones. Before we get to the complexities, a brief personal note. I first saw Young Frankenstein projected badly on a dormitory bedsheet with a mono speaker that distorted the violin motif. Even so, the precision of the pastiche cut through the noise. It taught me that when form is lovingly reconstructed, parody becomes a scholarly instrument. The joke lands because the grammar is correct. Moving forward, let us pose three large questions. Big question one. Why did major studios initially reject The Producers? We can infer a cluster of reasons. First-time director with a volatile premise centered on staging Springtime for Hitler. Uncertainty about audience appetite in 1967-68. Difficulty marketing a film that asks viewers to laugh at and thereby defang a recently living tyrant. And a tonal instability that to risk-averse gatekeepers read as danger rather than innovation. Yet the film's craft, particularly the musical architecture, was already evident. Evidence suggests peer advocacy mattered. Released narrowly, the film built a college circuit following. Then Peter Sellers, recognizing the audacity, personally bought full-page ads in Variety and the New York Times. This is non-trivial. Endorsement by a global comic star reframed the risk as an event. Add the 1969 Oscar, and we see how institutional skepticism pivoted to canonization within a year.
I'm curious about how much peer support like that actually moves outcomes. Is it mostly symbolic, or does it, alter the economics too?
Both. Symbolically, it confers taste legitimacy, which reduces reputational risk for exhibitors and critics. Economically, a star's imprimatur functions as targeted marketing that expands the addressable audience beyond early adopters. In Brooks's early career, industry allies, Sellers on The Producers. Later, recurring actors like Gene Wilder and Madeline Kahn, signaling ensemble reliability, created a feedback loop where daring premises could be financed because the human infrastructure appeared stable. Big question two, counterfactual. What if Brooks had not met Gene Wilder while making Blazing Saddles? Historically, Wilder's presence is catalytic. He replaces an ailing actor to become the Waco Kid. He brings a writer's mind, proposes Young Frankenstein, and, by condition of participation, insists on tonal fidelity, black and white cinematography, laboratory equipment sourced to mirror Universal's grammar, and a narrative with real heart beneath the jokes. Their dynamic combined Brooks's extroverted anarchy with Wilder's gentle mania. The result is mathematical complementarity.
Can we maybe now look at alternative paths? If Wilder is absent, does Brooks pivot back to television sooner? Or maybe develop the serious Brooks film slate earlier?
Plausibly, yes. Without Wilder's idea and leverage, Young Frankenstein may not exist, which removes half of the 1974 double peak and the later Broadway adaptation impetus. The 12 Chairs underperformance in 1970 might have loomed larger, nudging Brooks toward producing earlier. Brooks' films, which later gave us The Elephant Man and The Fly, could have become his primary public identity sooner. We might also expect more pure sketch experiments like Silent Movie and High Anxiety, but with fewer character-grounded crescendos. The repertory warmth anchored by Wilder, Kahn, Corman, and Leachman might still form, but the tonal center would likely skew broader and noisier. In short, the filmography remains funny. The arc is less symphonic. Big question 3. How does Brooks's legacy influence contemporary comedy? We observe several through lines. First, template inheritance. Get Smart codifies the incompetent spy. Later franchises echo its mechanics. Second, meta-merchandising and fourth wall play. Spaceballs jokes about lunchboxes inside the movie. That sensibility saturates pop-aware comedy now. Third, music as engine. Numbers like Springtime for Hitler and the Blazing Saddles title song are not decorations. They drive story beats, paving Brooks's path to a 12 Tony sweep for the producers on Broadway. Recognition matters here. The Honorary Academy Award in 2024 acknowledges influence across national film culture, not merely box office.
I think the next thing we should talk about is relevance now. With today's media norms, is satire still the best tool for, puncturing bigotry and power? Or does it risk amplifying what it mocks?
It's crucial to understand the use-mentioned distinction and audience competence. Brooks argues that making tyrants ridiculous robs them of allure. However, contemporary platforms fragment audiences, so shared literacy about irony cannot be assumed. Ongoing debates include boundaries between punching up and punching down, archival preservation versus content warnings for historically spiky language, as with Blazing Saddles, the ethics of recontextualizing sacred subjects for comedic ends, and the industrial question of whether streaming's algorithmic incentives reward easy reference over rigorous homage. Recent work, History of the World Part 2 in 2023, for which Brooks received an Emmy nomination for voiceover, shows the method still functions when contextualized carefully.
Building on that, it's interesting how he separated brands with Brooks films, producing The Elephant Man and The Fly, so audiences wouldn't expect gags. That feels like a lesson in managing expectations as part of the art itself.
Clearly. Brand partitioning was a strategic masterstroke that allowed serious dramas to be judged on their own terms, while his parodies continued elsewhere. And even within the parodies, he hid himself in the seams, with voice cameos in Young Frankenstein, for instance, or persuading the world's most famous mime to say the only spoken word in silent movie, non. In simpler terms, rigor plus mischief equals longevity. In conclusion, Mel Brooks stands as a transformative figure who synthesized Borscht Belt kinetics, television writer's room discipline, and cinephile homage into a durable comedic language. The honors, from the Kennedy Center to a 2024 honorary Oscar, merely quantify what the films and shows already demonstrate. We examined 3 questions: why early studios balked at the producers, how a missing Gene Wilder would have bent the arc, and where Brooks's influence sits inside today's debates over satire's boundaries. For further study, I recommend tracing the migration of specific Brooksian devices, musical set pieces, fourth wall ruptures, repertory ensembles, into contemporary streaming comedies and stage revivals.
So I guess that kind of sums it up. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Professor.